My name is Judge Gary Monroe Jackson. I grew up basically in North Cherry Creek. I was born in 1945 at Colorado General Hospital that was located at 8th and Colorado Boulevard at the time. Probably until I was 5, my parents, Floyd and Nancy Jackson, we lived at 354 Garfield Street, Denver. That was in North Cherry Creek. We lived there from my birth until I was about 5 years of age with my grandparents, Paris Monroe Scott, his wife Elizabeth Pitt Scott, and that particular location was a home that was built by my great-grandfather in 1926. My parents, while they were sort of educating themselves, because my dad had been discharged from the service, had gone to art school, and during those first 5 years, we would have lived with my grandparents at 354 Garfield Street. We then moved over into the Five Points area. We moved to a location at 2743 Race Street. We rented a home there. It was one of those 2-story brick homes on 27th and Race Street. We lived there from about 1950, and this was with my brother Larry, who was born in 1947. Sometimes we had other relatives live with us in this home because it was a home that probably had 3 or 4 bedrooms in the home. Even though we lived at 2743 Race Street, my parents drove us over to my grandparents' house every single day, would drop us off. We would, my brother and I went to Steck Elementary School from kindergarten to 6th grade, and then to Hill Junior High School, 7th through 9th, and then George Washington High School, 1960 through 63. I would have been in the first George Washington class that went there all 3 years, because George Washington was built and opened up in September of 1960. Basically, most of my childhood, teenage years lived in North Cherry Creek, other than the 4 or 5 years that we lived at 2743 Race Street. We would have lived there from 1950 until approximately 1955, when my parents purchased a lot and had a duplex built at 330, 324 Garfield Street. I would have lived at that location, which was just 3 homes just to the south of my grandparents' house. We would have lived at that home until I went away to college. I graduated from George Washington in June of '63. September of 1964, I received an academic scholarship to the University of Redlands in Redlands, California. I only stayed 1 year at Redlands. Redlands was a small college, basically smaller than my high school, and I ended up making a decision that this was not the type of college life I wanted at University of Redlands. Transferred back to CU Boulder. I stayed at the University of Colorado from September of 1964, graduated in June of '67, was admitted to CU Law School, and graduated from CU Law School in about June or July of 1970. In 1963, when I went to college at the University of Redlands, a month before I went to college, there was the March on Washington that took place, in which thousands of black people marched on Washington because of inequities. In September of 1963, there was the bombing of the Birmingham church, where 4 black girls were killed by KKK. In November of 1963, President Kennedy was assassinated, and then in June of 1964, Medgar Evers was assassinated. When I transferred to go to college to Boulder in September of 1964, I met Sonny Flowers, who became a very close friend. He was one of the few black students on campus that was not an athlete. But more importantly, his mom and dad were lawyers. And I had a chance to meet his mom, who had a law degree, and his dad, who not only had a law degree, but had a civil rights practice, a private practice in Arkansas, and was one of the former presidents of the National Bar Association. And in meeting those two people and seeing the type of work that they were doing and the accomplishments that they were making, changed me from wanting to be an engineer to being a lawyer. It was those particular events and meeting Sonny's parents, who were the first lawyers I had ever met, that changed the course of my education from being an engineer to being a lawyer. My first employment out of law school would have been the Denver District Attorney's Office. I actually had an opportunity in my 3L year, my third year of law school, to do an internship at the Denver District Attorney's Office. There were 2 other 3L students. We would drive down to Denver from Boulder Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We basically worked from about 1:30 to 5 o'clock, 3 days a week for a year period of time. That employment started with me being hired by Mike McKevitt. Mike McKevitt was the Denver District Attorney at the time, and that particular legal intern position resulted in me being hired as a deputy district attorney as soon as I graduated from law school. I was in the DA's office until '74. From my internship in '69 until 1974, in that 5 years, being employed by 3 different district attorneys, starting with Mike McKevitt, who ended up being elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. So he resigned from being a DA. His position was taken over by Jarvis Seckham, and Jarvis Seckham lost in an election race to Dale Tooley. So during my 5 years as a deputy DA and chief trial deputy DA, I worked for 3 different district attorneys. In 1974, I had reached the top salary at the district attorney's office, which was $18,000 per year. So once I reached that top salary, I made a decision that I was going to move on to a different position that carried different responsibilities and higher pay, and that was the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Colorado. Jim Treese hired me in about June or July of '74, and I worked in that office until approximately 1976 for a 2-year period of time in the civil division of the office. So I made a switch from doing criminal prosecution to representing the U.S. government in civil and commercial actions. I went into private practice in 1976. My aspiration throughout law school was to own my own law firm. That is what was important for me and the goals that I had. So I had the opportunity in 1976. There was a small law firm that one or two of its partners and associates were moving on, and they reached out to me to become a member and to become a partner of that law firm. This was a law firm that we called it Demana, Eklund, Chancho, and Jackson. The partner that I replaced would have been Tom Lamb, the brother of Governor Dick Lamb, who was moving on to Boulder. One of the office-sharing lawyers in that office at that time was Gary Hart. He was moving on to politics. This would have been a four-person law firm. Each of us were approximately the same age, the same amount of legal experience, and we had chosen an office site in North Cherry Creek where I had grown up. So I thought this really fit what I wanted to do in terms of a career. And so I would have joined that law firm sometime in 1976. We opened up our office at 50 South Steel Street, and the four of us remained in business for approximately 5 years. What happened in about 1981, two of the partners, Spike Eklund and Gene Chancho, wanted to do some different types of legal work. Spike Eklund wanted to go into the bankruptcy area. Gene Chancho, whose family relationships were mostly in North Denver and Adams County, wanted to change his legal base to that area. So Mike Demana and I remained together. We purchased a building at 1741 High Street, started a new firm called Demana and Jackson, and we stayed together for 37 years before I became a judge. The Sam Cary Bar Association was what I would call the first specialty bar in Colorado. And when I say first specialty bar, some people would call it affinity bar. It was a bar association of black lawyers, similar to the National Bar Association, which was the umbrella bar association. The National Bar Association was the bar association that black lawyers and judges belonged to beginning in about 1923. That was the result of prejudice and discrimination by the American Bar Association that would not allow black lawyers and judges to participate in the National Bar Association. When I got my law license, I was employed by the Denver District Attorney's Office. There were approximately 7 of us. We were all about the same age, between the ages of, let's say, 24 and 30. We decided that we wanted to create a bar association that we could network, that we could address what we considered to be unequal treatment within the law profession, a place in which we could formulate ideas and actions to address some of the inequities within the Colorado Bar Association. So the 7 founders of the Sam Cary Bar Association was Billy Lewis, who was our very first president, who we consider to be our leader, Raymond Dean Jones, who at that time was a clerk, the very first black clerk for Eddie Pringle, who was the Chief Justice of the Colorado Supreme Court, King Trimble, who was in private practice, Norm Early, who was with Colorado Legal Aid, Phil Jones, who was a law partner of Billy Lewis. We were the 7 co-founders of the Sam Cary Bar Association in 1971. Sam Cary not only exists, but it's thriving. And as I indicated to you initially, Sam Cary was the very first affinity bar. After Sam Cary, the next affinity bar that was created would have been the Colorado Hispanic Bar Association. After that, the Colorado Women's Bar Association. After that, APABA, which is called the Asian Pacific American Bar Association. After that would have been the South Asian American Bar Association, SABA. After that would have been the Colorado Native American Bar Association. Lastly, of the affinity bars would be the LGBTQ Bar Association. Those would have been the affinity bars that followed in the path of the Sam Cary Bar Association. Another joy in my life is baseball. In 1949, 1950, with Jackie Robinson being the first black baseball player in Major League Baseball, I became very, very attracted to baseball, playing baseball. It was probably in about 1987, 1988, there was an RFP issued by the Denver Metropolitan Baseball Stadium District that me and my law firm made an application to become one of the trial firms to acquire property for the building of Coors Field. Our application was accepted, and for about a 10 to 12 year period of time, my law firm did legal work specifically to acquire property to build Coors Field. There was one particular block that became very important, which was right at 20th and Blake Street. That was a block, or at least lots, that were owned by the Copperthwaite family. We had to go through I'll call it a condemnation type hearing to determine the value of that property and to acquire that property so that we could have home base basically at the corner of 20th and Blake Street. But I was a trial attorney that was involved in that particular acquisition. My acceptance, or my firm's acceptance of that work was in part due to, at that time, there were 7 or 8 commissioners on the Denver Metropolitan Baseball Stadium District. One of those commissioners was Penfield Tate II, who was the very first black mayor of Boulder. I credit Penfield Tate in urging the baseball stadium district that when acquiring legal talent to work to build Coors Field, that a part of the legal talent was a law firm of color. And so we were that law firm of color. In 2012, I had been in the legal practice for 37 years. I was basically a trial attorney. I was working in a small firm. Our firm ranged in size from 3 lawyers to sometimes up to 9 lawyers. We were competing with the best law firms in the state. But in 2012, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And because of that diagnosis, I knew that I had to change my lifestyle. The demands of private practice in working 60 to 80-hour weeks were something that was not conducive to my health or to my family. And so I made the decision that I would become a judge, because it would allow me to have a less stressful and less time-consuming occupation, but be in a theater in which I was very comfortable, and that's handling trials. The Denver County Court had a vacancy. It was the vacancy of Judge Claudia Jordan, who was the first black woman judge appointed in Colorado in 1994 by Mayor Ellington Webb. So she was retiring, and I applied for her vacancy. What else is also very interesting is that before she became a judge in 1994, she was one of the tenants in my office building, the office building that Mike DeMann and I owned on 1741 High Street. So there was a several-year period of time that she was a tenant in our building prior to her becoming a judge. During my stay as a Denver County Court judge, which was from 2012 until 2020, I was in two separate divisions. One was the criminal division that handled all the cases involving state misdemeanor crimes, and then also in the municipal ordinance division, in which I would handle city and municipal types of crimes. These were all cases involving potential jury trials, cases involving illegal conduct or misconduct that ranged in penalties from probation to 2 years in jail. This is basically what misdemeanors and municipal ordinances are comprised of. During my career, I thought it was always important to be involved in community activities. Especially in the early 70s and 80s, there were few lawyers of color, but there were only approximately 15 black lawyers in the state of Colorado. Because we had an educational level that was higher than most within our community, because we had the benefit of different experiences that many of our community members didn't have. I was involved from the very beginning in community activities, such as being one of the initial members of the Cleo Parker Robinson Dance Ensemble, being a member of the Urban League, being a member of the Northeast Denver Youth Services Board of Directors, but also being members of the Denver Bar Association, the Colorado Bar Association. I was one of the founding members of the Colorado Defense Bar. I then became also a member of the Colorado Trial Lawyers Association, Asian American Pacific Bar Association, the South Asian Bar Association. I became a member of that. I always thought it was important to be involved in those organizations, and it also enhanced the reputation and the business of the law firm to be visible in various community activities. Monte Pasco Civic Leadership Award that I received was an award that I really cherished, because of the reputation of Monty Pascal, his wife Pat Pascal, the work that they did in the community, the work that they did in the legislature, the work that they did in Colorado politics. But one of the things I treasure about that award is that I received a plaque that was a sculpture created by Ed Dwight. And Ed Dwight was our very first black astronaut, but he created this particular plaque out of bronze that I cherish because this plaque has a insignia or a facial appearance of Monty Pascal and has other elements of our Colorado history and resources on this plaque. In 2021, I was inducted into the Denver Public Library Black Hall of Fame, and I was also inducted into the National Bar Association Fred Gray Hall of Fame. Now that NBA Fred Gray Hall of Fame, what is so special about that particular induction is that there are only 3 black attorney judges in the state of Colorado that are in that particular Hall of Fame. It's a Hall of Fame of approximately 250 people. The National Bar Association now has a membership of about 65,000 people. So to me, it's a special accomplishment. Now, Denver Public Library Hall of Fame, what I cherish about that particular award, I've been going to bookmobiles and reading from the Denver Public Library since I was probably in 5th or 6th grade. In June or July of 1970, after graduating from law school, I would go down to the Cherry Creek Branch Library that was in the neighborhood and study for the bar examination. So the Denver Public Library Hall of Fame has great meaning for me because of my enjoyment of reading and how those libraries have propelled me through the profession and through the things that I've done in life. The development of Lincoln Hills was by 2 black developers who purchased the property from the Sayer family in approximately 1922. These 2 black developers incorporated their business. It was called the Lincoln Hills Country Club Development. I liked the name because it was to be a country club for black people, and it was to be a place to recreate, a place to buy cabins, build cabins. It was a place that black people could feel safe and could basically have a place of our own. At that time, because of Jim Crow policies throughout the nation, there were this was one of 2 black-owned recreational areas west of the Mississippi. But our cabin, I characterize it as the gateway cabin into Lincoln Hills. Lincoln Hills was approximately 200 acres. It was divided into 1,700 lots. These lots were small, let's say 25 by about 50 feet. The lots ranged in prices from $25 to $50. Our cabin, which is called the Zephyr View Cabin, named because of the California Zephyr that the railroad tracks go right through the canyon and right in front of our cabin. But our cabin was the gateway cabin into Lincoln Hills. It was the very first cabin built. When you crossed Highway 72 onto South Beaver Creek Road was the dirt road that went north to south into Lincoln Hills. Our cabin was the very first cabin on South Beaver Creek Road that you would see from the road. He built that cabin. He built several other cabins. There was developed in Lincoln Hills what was called Wink's Lodge, which was a 6-room structure. And Wink's Hamlet, who was the owner of Wink's Lodge, owned about 9 or 10 other cabins as well as the lodge, where black people would visit from all across the nation from about 1922, when Lincoln Hills was first developed and platted, until 1965, when Wink's Hamlet died. You may have heard about the place called Manhattan Beach or Bruce's Beach. That was a black-owned recreational development in Manhattan Beach, California, but it only lasted from 1910 until 1912. The city council condemned the property from the black people and took over that property. Lincoln Hills was, for that period of time, 1922 to 1965, the only black-owned resort area west of the Mississippi. Still thrives today. And when I say it still thrives today, it is still primarily black-owned because 2/3 of the property now is owned by Robert Smith, the black billionaire who has been acquiring property. About 2007 is when he started acquiring property in Lincoln Hills. Our cabin, Zephyr View Cabin, was designated an historic cabin by Gilpin County, their Preservation Commission. Our cabin, which was built in 1926 by my great-grandfather, is now, 97 years of age. Just a few weeks ago, on October 27th, we had 27 people at my cabin to celebrate my mom's 99th birthday at the cabin. So the cabin is still there. It is still actively used. One of the projects that I've done since my retirement was to do some restoration and to do some construction to add on a couple bedrooms and another bath to our cabin. So we've extended the footprint of our cabin from about 500 square feet to 1,100 square feet. So it is still actively being used by the family. Lincoln Hills was accessible in several different ways. First of all, it was accessible by highway. Back in the 20s and 30s and 40s, the highways were dirt roads. When my parents and grandparents and great-grandfather would travel from Denver to our cabin, it was a 4-hour trip because it was dirt road. And so they would typically go up there on a Friday and come back on a Sunday, because it would take 4 hours to travel to and from. For me today, it takes me 55 minutes from my doorstep in North Cherry Creek to go to the cabin. Another access to the cabin was by train. And they used to have a train called the Dinky train. The Dinky train people would get on the train in Union Station in Denver, ride the train up to, they had a stop, which was right at a railroad crossing, right almost at the corner of South Beaver Creek Road and Highway 72. That's where the train would stop. People would either exit or get on the train at that location, and then either walk. Wink's Hamlet had a truck that he would load people up and drive people the half mile, 3/4 of a mile to the lodge. Now, the travel was treacherous not only because of the dirt road, but the travel was treacherous because of sundown towns. And when I say sundown town, what that means is that there were communities such as Wonderview, Rollinsville, that when black travelers would go through those communities, you would not stop. You were not welcome in those communities because of discriminatory attitudes or KKK involvement in those communities. Lincoln Hills was developed, as we've talked about, because of discriminatory policies that were happening at other resort areas in Colorado where black people were not welcome, such as Estes Park, Linwood Springs, the Broadmoor, even the Brown Palace. Black people were not welcomed at the Brown Palace. Well, let me give you an example. Luminaries such as Duke Ellington, Lena Horne, Zora Neale Hurston, Langston Hughes, if they came to Colorado to perform, to present, they could not stay at the Brown Palace or other facilities in Denver. So when they finished their engagements, they would travel up to Lincoln Hills to rest and recreate in Lincoln Hills. So that was the method of travel. It was either by train or by car. There are two different exhibits several different exhibits that I and my family have been involved in. The very first exhibit that is of prominence was an exhibit at the Blair Caldwell Library that has photographs and memorabilia from Lincoln Hills. The second exhibit that I'm most proud of is that back in about 2010, I served on the History Colorado board when my friend Ed Nichols was the executive director of History Colorado. History Colorado has created an ongoing exhibit of Lincoln Hills in which my mother and I and my wife and others, we do a simulation of what life was like in Lincoln Hills during the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And that particular exhibit is still ongoing at History Colorado. And the third exhibit that has just opened up approximately 3 weeks ago is at the History Museum of Boulder, in which artifacts from my cabin, including a historic quilt that was quilted by an aunt of mine, an oral interview of me, college books of my grandmother are on display at the History Museum of Boulder and will be on display for a couple of years. So that's a standing exhibit at the History Museum of Boulder. My wife, Regina Lee Jackson, she and I met in approximately 1982. We've been married since 1986. I have 2 stepchildren, 4 grandchildren. She retired from U.S. West approximately 15 or 20 years ago, created her own law firm called Action Jackson Realty. Not only is she selling real estate, but she is now selling her book and her documentary movie. Well, my family is what I consider to be an historic family. I consider it to be a family of great support, great leaders. My great-grandfather, who was enslaved in Missouri, did not have the benefit of a public education, learned how to read and write on his own, learned the carpentry trade, came to Colorado in 1919 because one of his sons was injured in World War I and was hospitalized at Fitzsimmons Army Medical Hospital. He came to Colorado to visit his son. Upon visiting Colorado and Denver, he saw that the opportunities for a black man and family were much greater than what was available to him in Missouri. With his skills as a carpenter, he built 3 homes in the North Cherry Creek area. 2 on Garfield Street, 1 on 563 Harrison that still stands. With the building of those 3 homes, that was the enticement and the encouragement to get his family to move from Missouri and Illinois to come to Colorado. Much of what I do in life, I stand on his shoulders. He had the vision to come to Colorado. He had the vision to buy property in North Cherry Creek, to buy property in Lincoln Hills, where he became a builder of cabins and structures in Lincoln Hills. On my mom's side, it was my grandmother, Elizabeth Pitt Scott, who was able to obtain a college degree in 1915 in Jefferson City, Missouri, at Lincoln University. That was the first college-educated person in our family. With her, I call it determination, because when she came to Colorado in 1926 to live at the location of 354 Garfield Street, the home that my great-grandfather built, because of racism, discrimination, although she had a degree from Lincoln University, the Denver Public Schools would not hire her in 1950. They did not recognize her degree. She became a dietitian, salad lady, whatever you want to call it, at the VA hospital, which was right next to Colorado General at the time. So she helped provide for her family through her determination by working at the VA hospital until just before her death. She died at a young age of diabetes. My grandfather, who did not have a high school education, but provided for his family through various jobs, including working in a slaughterhouse. Very, very difficult work. Working at Woolworths. My mom talks about her dad going to work at Woolworths, and this was down on like 16th and Champa Street at the time. He was a soda jerk there, but the kids, when they would go down there, could not sit at the counter in the 30s when he was working there. His last job that I remember would have been in the 50s and 60s when he was working at the slaughterhouse. But it's that type of determination, character that motivates me to do what I do because of what they did.